What is up, Crosspoint students? My name is Ryan, and I am the student pastor at the Bellevue location. We are now in week 3 of Everything Everywhere, and in this series, we've been talking about the stress and anxiety and how sometimes in life it just feels like it's so overwhelming with all the things that life has to throw at us. But more importantly, how God can take care of us in those moments. Now, I'm sure you've experienced a time when it's felt like everything in your life is just so stressful. No matter what you do to get yourself off your mind of school or life at home or relationships and friends or even sports, you still feel the pressure of the world just resting on your shoulders. You go to bed with that what if question, or you wake up thinking if only, and you go to school with I just wish, and those questions continue to run around in your brain over and over, building the stress and anxiety further in your life. And this is when we need the help of other people in our lives the most. We need friends to surround us and pick us up when life feels like its anxieties and stresses everything and everywhere. I remember there was a time in my life when I was in a relationship that I thought I was going to be my forever. And actually, it was very close to being my forever. But suddenly, the relationship was over, and it happened almost overnight. This relationship that I had put all of my trust and faith into what was now broken and actually just not existent anymore at all. It really shook me to my core and left me with so many questions. And in that time, anxiety and stress crept up more than it ever had in my life. If you don't know me, I'm very logical, and for this, it was a new place for me. I live in the black and white, and I need a lot of answers to things in my life that are going on. There were so many things that I began to wonder about, but more than that, so many logistical things that I needed to figure out and felt like I needed to do it alone. But the best part was, I never was. See, God knew this would happen. God had already gone before me and placed me in the best position possible. He placed me around some of the best friends anyone could ever ask for in this situation. And in that time, my friends consistently were checking on me, asking what I needed, and really just came to my life and did anything that needed to be done with no questions asked. Maybe you have a story like that as well, where you feel like it cannot get worse, but suddenly the story no longer became about stress and anxiety, rather than the goodness of God and His faithfulness to use such an amazing people in your life. See, in this situation, my solution to stress was all the friends that God had placed in my life. But we rarely think about other people when it comes to our stress. Why is it like that? Why is it that we don't think of other people when we know that friendships can help us, that they can pick us up? The first reason is we feel alone. Stress can be very, very isolating, and whether or not we realize it, most of us have been just told our whole life to just figure it out. And we place the pressures on ourselves and come up with reasons not to bring it up because you don't want to bring other people and friends into your life and what you're going through. I'm fully guilty of this too, and one of my go-to phrases when stress creeps up in my life is, "It is what it is," because why let someone else in? Why? They're just going to worry and ask questions, right? So on one side, we have this pressure to feel like if we just work harder and grind it out, I'll be able to fix this situation. Or we have the feeling of, oh, well, I'll just take on the battle on my own and let myself continue to stack the problem after problem after problem on each other. And even though it doesn't work, we keep on doing it and we keep on isolating ourselves further away from what we know can help us. Another way we don't bring other people into our lives is we tend to pretend like we're doing better than we are. Many of us, again, have to go to our go-to statements when friends ask us how we're doing and how our day is going. And we try to put on a different face for people, and we impress others or put on an act. We simply tell others and ourselves that we're fine. We do this because it's the thing that we can control. We can sometimes control the way people view us, and if that's by making fun of ourselves and making people laugh, then we're going to continue to do that. And that life is everything fine. Or we try harder in school and control our grades, which leads to people think that we're doing great because I'm coming home with A's on my test scores and managing our own life isolated and pretending to do better than we are can feel like it's the easier route than having to admit to friends that actually life right now isn't great. And if we're feeling that way with friends, we most certainly are feeling the same way with God. Because if you can't even help our own life and its life's issues, why bother bringing God into our circumstances? We wonder if God can help. Does he even care? Why bother God? What if I pray and God doesn't show up the way that I want him to? Well, there actually is someone in the Bible who has already answered and asked that question many times, and his name is Solomon. Solomon writes the book of Proverbs and is commonly referred to as the book on wisdom. In Proverbs 29 verses 25, specifically, it says, "Fearing people is a dangerous trap, but trusting the Lord means safety." Let me start off by saying this. Yes. Yes, God cares. Yes, God wants to be brought up into your life. And yes, God wants to help you in your life with your stress when things feel like everything is everywhere. God is where our safety truly is. And while God can't be there physically, he has placed friends in your life who can be. Jesus even knew this as well. One of Jesus' closest followers was a friend named John. And John wrote one of the accounts of Jesus' life that we refer to as the Gospels, which are the first 4 books in the New Testament. He records at a time when Jesus had been beaten, tried, found guilty, and put on the cross to be crucified. At this time, Jesus knew he was going to die. His whole life had led up to this very moment, and now he was about to fulfill the very reason that God had sent him to this earth. But Jesus was still human, and he still had emotions like you and I. And can you imagine feeling the weight of the decision, knowing that you had to be beaten, thrown into prison, and then crucified on the cross for you and I? Talk about stress being everything and everywhere. As if that wasn't enough, Jesus was worried about his mom and what would happen to her when he was gone. Who would take care of her? It says in John 19, verses 25 through 27, "Standing near the cross were Jesus' mother and his mother's sister Mary, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother standing there beside the disciple he loved, he said to her, 'Dear woman, here is your son.' And he said to this disciple, 'Here is your mother.' And from then on, this disciple took her into his home." We see 2 things here in this passage. The first one, Jesus leaning into another person. When everything was everywhere for Jesus, he turned to one of his closest friends, John. Jesus was stressed about what would happen to his mom when he died. So he leaned onto his friend in that moment. God used John to help take care of Jesus' family. 2, God using Jesus to save us from our biggest problem. See, when sin entered the world, we turned away from God's perfect love, which broke our relationship with him. And that's when the narrative turned. God sent Jesus, who was the ultimate sacrifice. Jesus healed what was broken and showed us just how good and loving God truly is. And Christianity is the only religion in the world that has nothing to do with what we can do or the good works that we've done, but it's everything about who Jesus is, what he's done, and what he's made right. God sent Jesus to rescue us from ourselves. It's a big theme throughout the Bible and throughout history. God uses other people to help us when we're stressed. God uses other people to help us when we feel like everything is everywhere. And just as Jesus leaned on John to be a friend and trust that he would take care of his mother, and just as God trusted in Jesus to save us from our own sins, we can trust our friends and trust that they have a purpose in our lives, a purpose that can be so beneficial to both of you. I had to learn that leaning on my friends and had to understand that in that season of my life, I couldn't hold all the weight that I was going through. I couldn't deal with all the stresses and anxieties on my own, but that I needed my friends and I needed the church to lean on. In that time, I now no longer look back at that situation and think of what a sad, anxious time it was, rather how much happened and growth happened in my life and how God stretched me in my friendships and myself, and especially in my walk with him. So as we wrap up during small groups, think of a time where you felt like all the stress and anxiety was around you and how a friend showed up to your time in need. Or maybe how you have been a friend in someone else's life in their time of need. God uses other people to help us when we're stressed. That includes your small group, it includes your small group leader, And each week you get the chance to walk and talk through stuff like this with people who not only want to help you, but who understand what it's like to feel everything is everywhere. So maybe try opening up to your small group to learn to lean on your friends just as I did. It was the best decision that I could have made, and I know that it will help you too.